My name's Daniel. I'm 29, and I used to work the overnight shift at a small rural motel. It wasn't one of those big chain places, just a family-owned spot with 2 floors and maybe 25 rooms in total. I typically worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The motel didn't get much traffic at night, maybe a couple of late check-ins if someone was traveling through, but most of the time it was dead quiet. That's actually why I took the job. I'm not really a people person, so sitting in an empty building most nights worked perfectly for me. The office is set up so there's the main front desk area, some chairs, a coffee machine, and then a hallway behind the desk leads to a back office. That back office is kind of like a lounge. It has another desk, a couch, a mini fridge, and a TV mounted on the wall. The cool thing about that is there's a small speaker back there that dings loud and clear whenever someone rings the bell at the front desk. So normally I just sit in the back, watch something on my laptop, sometimes nap on the couch, and then when I hear the bell, I get up and walk to the front. I've worked there long enough to know the regular rhythm of the place. The building creaks sometimes, the heater makes a clicking noise, and the front door buzzes when a guest uses their key card after hours. Those are all normal sounds. But the thing about working the night shift is that even the normal stuff can start to get under your skin if you think too much about it. And sometimes the things that seem normal at first turn out not to be normal at all. This happened on a Tuesday night back in the fall. It was cold outside, maybe in the 40s, and the parking lot was empty except for 4 or 5 cars belonging to guests. It was about 2 a.m. when I first heard the bell. It was distinct and loud, the sound I was always listening for. I stood up from the couch in the back and went into the main office. When I got there, nobody was standing at the desk. The lobby was totally empty. I looked outside through the glass doors, but the road was dark and seemingly empty as well. No cars were pulling in, no headlights, nothing. I thought maybe I had imagined it, but the bell is so loud and clear I knew I hadn't. I stood there for a minute, waiting to see if anyone came in late, but no one did, so I just shrugged it off and went back to the lounge. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and scrolled for a while. Not even 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. I jumped up and walked quickly into the main office, but once again, it was empty. The hair on the back of my neck stood up this time. I walked to the glass doors and even stepped outside. The parking lot looked the same as before. The cars were all parked with their lights off, and there was no movement anywhere. The road was completely empty too. I walked to the edge of the sidewalk and looked both ways, but there wasn't a single sign of life. I went back inside and decided to sit behind the front desk this time instead of going to the back. I figured maybe some drunk person was messing with me, a ding-dong ditch of sorts, or maybe a guest's kid thought it was funny. But after sitting there for 15 minutes with nothing happening, I started to relax again. I leaned back in the chair, opened my laptop, and figured it was just one of those weird things I'd laugh about later. Then, the bell rang again. I jumped up so fast it hurt my neck. The lobby was still empty. Nobody in sight. My skin started to crawl. I walked around the front desk to make absolutely sure nobody was hiding, but there was no one. I checked the lobby bathrooms. I even stepped outside again. Nothing. I walked the lot a little, shining my phone flashlight, but it was just dead quiet. When I came back inside, I knew I had to be vigilant. Instead of going back to the lounge, I sat down in the chair right behind the front desk. If someone was sneaking around and ringing the bell just to mess with me, I wanted to be there to catch them in the act. I turned the lobby lights down a little so the room was dim, and I just sat there listening. It was so quiet that every little sound made me twitch. The clock ticking on the wall sounded louder than usual. The fridge in the back office clicked on and hummed every couple of minutes. The building creaked as it settled. I sat there with my arms crossed, staring directly at the silver bell on the counter. 15 minutes passed, then 20. My eyes started to get heavy, and I thought maybe the person had given up. I even started thinking I just imagined the whole thing, letting myself relax and doze off slightly. Then, it happened. The bell rang. Only this time, I saw exactly what was doing it. A pale hand came up from under the desk, reaching over the counter and pressed the bell right in front of me. I jumped up so fast I'm sure the chair almost fell over, and I bolted down the hall into the back office. I slammed the door and locked it. I stood there in the dark, my chest pounding, my mind racing. How could someone even be under there? The desk doesn't have much space underneath, but it's enough for someone to crouch if they squeezed in. That meant they'd been hiding just a few feet away from me, waiting all this time. I forced myself to look at the security monitors. There were 4 cameras, one in the lobby, one in the hallway, and 2 on the parking lot. On the lobby feed, I saw the chair that I'd just been sitting in had tipped over in my rush. The counter looked empty. Then, in the bottom corner of the frame, I saw movement. A head poked out from behind the desk. I couldn't make out details, just the outline and the cold glint of eyes staring straight into the camera lens. I backed away from the monitor. I couldn't look at it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. I whispered to the dispatcher that someone had broken in and was hiding in the lobby. She told me to stay where I was and that officers were on the way. While I was on the phone, I watched the monitor again. The head disappeared, and then I saw the person crawl out from behind the desk on his hands and knees. He stood up. He was tall and wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled tight, and his posture was hunched over. Then he turned around and started walking around the lobby like he was looking for something, and then he walked out of the camera frame toward the hallway that led to the back office where I was hiding. I pressed my back against the locked door. A moment later, the knob rattled. Just once. A very slow, deliberate rattle. And then nothing. The dispatcher kept asking me if I was safe, but I couldn't even answer for a few seconds because my throat felt like it was closing up. After what felt like forever, I heard slow footsteps moving away. I rushed back to the monitor. The man was pacing around the lobby again. At one point, he stood in front of the glass doors and just stared outside like he was waiting for someone. Then he walked over to the brochure rack and started flipping through the papers like he was sarcastically killing time. Minutes dragged by. Finally, I saw flashing blue and red lights through the parking lot cameras. The cops pulled up, 2 cars. The man must have seen it too because he suddenly bolted out of frame. A second later, I heard the front doors open. When the officers cleared the building, they found a large rock near the front door that was presumably used to prop the front door open, allowing him to slip back inside after the bell-ringing pranks. But they didn't find him inside. He was gone. They searched the lot, checked the road, and the officer told me whoever it was must have slipped out as soon as they pulled up. I kept playing it in my head after they left, the way that hand just came up from under the desk and pressed the bell, calm as anything. Now, every time I hear that bell at night, I think of that experience. I don't think I'll ever look at that desk the same way again.
I was 22, and I took the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station on the weekends. It was usually dead quiet, which was fine by me. I'd only been working there about 2 months when this happened, and at the time I didn't think much of it, but looking back, it makes me sick. One Friday night, around 2:30 in the morning, my coworker Max and his friend Ben came in for coffee. They were pretty giggly and out of it because they'd taken some magic mushrooms earlier, so they were in a really goofy mood. While we were just chatting about random nonsense, Ben mentioned something weird. He said there was this car in the parking lot, sitting with its lights completely off, but the engine was running, and someone was definitely inside. He said the guy had been there before they even pulled in. Ben being Ben, he went and questioned the guy, and the driver claimed he was waiting for a DoorDash order. Now usually that's normal for us, but the thing was, I hadn't gotten an online order in close to 2 hours, and I spent most of my time cleaning in the back away from the front doors, so I couldn't even see the parking lot clearly from where I worked. We figured maybe it was just a delayed order or something strange, and the 2 guys went outside to smoke a cigar and play with Max's dog. I didn't think too much of it initially, but once I was alone, I felt uneasy. I kept thinking, how long has that car really been out there before Max showed up? About an hour passed, and Max and Ben came back in for another coffee refill. That's when Max explained more about the car. He said it was parked specifically in a spot that was a total blind spot from the register and the front windows. I mean, the guy had chosen the one place I couldn't monitor him from inside. Max told me that the entire hour they were out there playing with his dog and smoking, the man in the car kept switching between staring intensely at them and looking down at his phone, constantly checking something. Ben, in his totally high state, got fed up with the guy watching them, so he walked right up to the car and asked, "What is up? Why are you staring at us?" The man's first reaction was to pretend he didn't speak a single word of English. When Ben pushed him, the guy suddenly switched to perfectly fine English and started stammering that he must have had the wrong address. Then he sped right out of the parking lot. Max was definitely higher than Ben was at that point, but the crucial details he noticed are what made it truly terrifying. He said the car looked absolutely brand new and had no license plates on it whatsoever. He also noticed a huge pile of blankets in the backseat, enough blankets to easily hide a person under. And the scariest part? Max said that as soon as the man was confronted, another car immediately pulled into the lot. This second car also looked brand new, also had its lights off, and also had no license plates. And the moment the first car started driving away, the second car immediately followed them out. Max stayed another 15 minutes, but when he left, he told me to be incredibly careful. Max came back again around 6 a.m. when he was completely sober. He wanted to check on me, which was sweet, but we talked more about it. He confirmed the driver had been acting super suspicious the whole time they were out there, constantly checking his phone and staring at the store doors. Even Max admitted he was freaked out. We both decided that had they not been there, this whole scenario could have gone terribly wrong. I carry a knife for self-defense, but my gut tells me that based on what they described, multiple people, coordination, no plates, it wouldn't have been enough. I was just lucky they were outside acting like kids and hanging out in the parking lot. I truly wish I didn't have to tell you the update, but I do. The car came back again during my shift the very next night. It was about 3 a.m. and I was mopping the floors when 4 guys came in. They looked like truckers or travelers just needing coffee and snacks. As I was ringing them up, one of them asked if I knew anything about the car that was at the far end of the parking lot running with its lights off. I looked at the man and asked, "What car are you talking about?" He went on to tell me there was what looked like a brand new Subaru with no license plates, running, and what looked like 2 guys arguing inside the front seats. My heart absolutely dropped when he said the description was identical to the night before, only now there were 2 people inside. He explained that as they were pumping gas, they noticed the car because it had been there when they pulled in and it just sat there the whole time. He told me that as they passed the car, since they were at the pump farthest from the doors, they could clearly hear a guy talking pretty loudly and actually pointing towards the doors of the store. One of the guys in their group started to walk towards the Subaru to ask if everything was okay, but the guys inside immediately noticed them. They slammed the car into reverse and drove away like a shot. I told them that I believed that was the exact same car from the night before that had been acting suspicious and had left with another car following it. They seemed really alarmed and offered to stay with me for a bit to make sure they didn't return. I thanked them again, letting them top off their coffee for free before they headed out. Nothing else happened the rest of my shift, but I was hyper aware of everything. What's scariest is that I never once saw this car, yet I had multiple unrelated people warn me about it. To have the same car come 2 nights in a row at almost the same time and always park in that single blind spot makes me believe my fear was totally justified. I'm just eternally grateful that both nights a group of people happened to show up so I wasn't alone and could avoid whatever those guys were planning.
Okay, so I used to work the night shift at this super small, kind of rundown hotel. And when I say small, I mean small. 3 floors, maybe 40 rooms total. It was the kind of place you got stuck working if you liked your peace and quiet, and I did. My shift was always the graveyard, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights it was mind-numbingly boring. I'd sit behind the desk, do some basic paperwork, check the security cameras just to make sure nobody was stealing the vending machine snacks, and mostly just watch YouTube on my phone. The lobby wasn't big. It was the front desk, a little lounge area off to the side with some couches and a big TV that was never on, and then the vending machines tucked into a corner. I had a little glassed-in office behind the desk with a computer so I could see everything while sitting down. The front doors were locked automatically after hours, which was standard. Guests had to buzz in, and I'd press a button to let them through. After midnight, you usually wouldn't see a soul, maybe just a late arriving guest or someone coming in off the road. One night, this man came in around 11 p.m., and everything about that interaction still gives me this awful feeling in my gut. He buzzed the door, and I hit the release. He walked in, mid-40s maybe, tall, kind of gaunt, wearing jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. He was carrying one of those standard-issue black backpacks. He walked right up to the desk and asked, really quietly, if we had a room for the night. I told him the price, and he just nodded and pulled out a card. I swiped it, it beeped, it went through, or so I thought. I gave him a key card for room 214 on the second floor. And this is where the first little alarm bell went off. I remember he looked at me for a second too long before he left. I mean, not aggressively, but his expression was completely blank. His eyes just stayed on mine for maybe 3 or 4 seconds after I handed him that key. There was no thank you, no blink, just a cold stare. Then he turned and walked off toward the elevator. Nothing about that exchange screamed, "I am dangerous," but it was enough to make him stick in my mind. I was a little unsettled, but I figured I was just tired and paranoid. I went back to my office chair and went back to scrolling through my phone. It was only an hour later when things got really weird. Around midnight, I looked up from my phone, and he was back. The man from 214. He wasn't at the desk. He had just walked past my office and sat down in the lounge area, the one with the couches. The TV wasn't on, but he was sitting there, facing the blank TV screen. I figured, okay, maybe he couldn't sleep. Some guests do hang out in the lobby, especially if they're restless, so I tried not to think too much of it. But after about half an hour, I started paying closer attention. He was literally just sitting there, doing nothing. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't reading, he wasn't even dozing off. He was just staring straight ahead at that black, blank TV screen. I got up at one point to grab a water from the vending machine, and when I walked across the lobby, I felt him move. I could feel him turn his head and watch me the whole way. I didn't look at him directly, but I could feel his eyes locked on me until I was safely back behind the desk. It gave me this horrible, uneasy feeling. Around 1 a.m., I was super bored, so I started messing with the reservation system on the computer. I was just clicking through things to kill time. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach absolutely drop. I pulled up the list of occupied rooms, and I saw that room 214 said vacant. I mumbled, "What the hell?" under my breath, and double-checked everything. I mean, I just checked this guy in an hour and a half earlier. I thought maybe I'd made some kind of clerical mistake. So I looked at the check-in logs. Nothing. No name for him, no reservation, no check-in time recorded. Then I went into the transaction screen to check the payment again. It showed no payment, no charge, nothing. I swore I swiped his card and it beeped like it worked, but there was zero evidence in the system that he was ever supposed to be there. That's when I picked up the phone and called room 214. It rang like 10 times, no answer. Finally, I checked the key card entry log for that room, which tells you every time the door was opened with a key. It showed nothing. No one had entered the room that night. I realized he never even went to the room after I gave him the card. I looked over into the lounge, and there he was, still sitting there, still staring at the TV that wasn't even on. My heart started hammering in my chest. I sat there, just frozen, debating what to do. Part of me was trying to rationalize it, maybe the system glitched, but the lack of an entry log, combined with the lack of a payment, made it crystal clear. He wasn't a guest, he was just there. I waited another 15 minutes, trying to figure out if I was just being paranoid. Around 1:30 a.m., I walked over to the lounge area and asked him, "Excuse me, sir, is everything okay?" He turned his head slowly and looked at me with that same blank expression. He told me, very flatly, I just couldn't sleep. Then he turned right back toward the black screen. I nodded, walked back behind my desk, and my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even use the mouse properly. Around 2 a.m., I noticed he wasn't sitting in the lounge anymore. My stomach dropped instantly because I hadn't seen him leave. I scanned the lobby, and then I spotted him. He was standing at the end of the hallway near the bathrooms, half hidden in the shadows. He was just standing still, watching. I kept glancing up, pretending to be busy on the computer. He stood there for a long time, and then slowly he walked back out and sat in the lounge again, like he was just taking a brief break from staring. I finally called my manager at home and explained the whole situation. She sounded tired. I woke her up, obviously, and she told me to just keep an eye on him and call the police if he did anything threatening. I hung up and remember thinking, it already feels threatening. After that, I was glued to the security cameras. I watched the first floor hallway camera and saw him walk all the way down, stop at the end, stand there for several minutes, then walk back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed in there for almost 10 minutes. What was he doing in there? I have no idea. Every time I looked up from the monitor, he was somewhere else. Near the vending machines, by the elevators, standing in a dark corner of the lobby where the light didn't quite reach. He was always staring. By 3:30 a.m., I couldn't take the stress anymore. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. That there was a man in the hotel who was not a guest and was acting suspiciously. They said they would send someone out. While I was waiting, I noticed he moved again, this time closer to the desk. He was standing maybe 15 feet away, just watching me. He didn't blink much. He definitely didn't speak. He just stared like he had a serious staring problem. I pretended to type, but I was so scared I could hardly breathe. Around 3:50 a.m., the front door buzzer went off. I thought, thank God the cops are here. But it wasn't. It was just another guest, coming back late. I let him in, and the man, the weird intruder, turned his head and watched the guest walk past. He followed him with his eyes all the way across the lobby. That scared me even more, because it was like he was studying him. A few minutes later, the man disappeared again. I checked the cameras frantically and saw him standing outside a guest room door on the first floor. He was literally just standing there, motionless, outside a stranger's room. That was the line. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I called actual 911. I told the dispatcher he is outside a guest's room and I don't know what he is trying to do. They assured me officers were on the way immediately. I kept my eyes glued to the camera feed. He just stood at that door for about 3 minutes, then slowly walked back toward the lobby. When he came back, he walked right up to the front desk this time and leaned over the counter. He looked at me and asked, "Is there any food?" His voice was so low and dry, it was disturbing. I managed to point toward the corner and said, "Vending machines are over there." He gave a small, slow smile, then turned and walked away. I just sat there, staring at the clock, begging for the cops to arrive. Finally, around 4:10 a.m., 2 officers showed up. I let them in, practically running to meet them, and pointed right at him. He was back in the lounge, sitting down. They walked over and talked to him for